Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're on the world. Welcome to the Celtic Down Under Weekend Review. I'm Anthony McGuire, joined as always with Paul Massey as we look at Ross County 1, Celtic 2, battle at Dingwall, which always seems to be the case every time we go up there. Late goals, lots of drama. We got there in the end. Paul, how was your weekend, mate?
Yeah, well, apart from the drama in Dingwall, main issue is one of the dogs has not been particularly well. So had a bit of a traumatic 24 hours or so. Now he seems to be, well, he's not at death's door, which I feared he might be for a period, where he was not eating, and the less said about his back end, the better. But suffice to say, it's not been pleasant for the last day and a bit. But got him for the vets first thing this morning, and they said, yeah, it doesn't look the best, but he's probably going to be fine. So on some meds, under observation, he's eating a little bit, and yeah, fingers crossed he picks up here. Yeah, we'll be back to normal. But yeah, a little bit stressful.
What's his name, Paul?
He's my wife named him. He's Albus. After Albus Dumbledore, the missus is a Harry Potter fan. Not very de rigueur these days. But yeah, she's
before she turned on a nut job. Yep,
she's of that vintage. But yeah, he's had a rough 24, 36 hours, but he's hopefully started to turn a corner. So yeah, probably worse for my wife than it's been for me, because she's been the one up nearly every hour in the night, because she's the lighter sleeper of the two of us. So yeah, I managed to dodge the worst of it. Although at 5 o'clock, I got the nudge to say, "That's it. You need to get up, and you need to keep an eye on him." So yeah, he's on the mend, hopefully. But yeah, that's taken up the last day or so. But yeah, more stressful than it needed to be last night. I guess we'd all just been a bit blasé, like, the rhetoric. Obviously, we've not touched on Dortmund, at least in public. We have in the background, but the rhetoric post that was, oh well, you scalp teams at home, you get scalped in Europe, and you'll scalp teams again when you come back. But it wasn't quite as straightforward as that in the end. Classic European hangover. But yeah, main thing was getting the 3 points and back down the road.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a vintage performance by any stretch of the imagination. I wanted to the vet on Friday, so he had to get some blood tests done, and I got a phone call back today saying that everything was A-okay, so happy days. He will continue to interrupt podcasts for a little while longer, at least. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, pretty quiet this weekend. But it was good just to recharge the batteries. And obviously, in the back of my mind, I knew we had Celtic on Sunday night to curl up to before going to bed. But it wasn't quite the relaxing watch after what was, as you say, a bit of a debacle over in Dortmund. Yeah, you're right. We haven't spoken about it on air, but yeah, like I said, it was. There's a lot to be said about it. I think what we'll do is probably just intertwine that into our analysis of the game last night, because I'm sure obviously lots has been said online with various podcasts of all varying descriptions. So we will get our say in there as we move along, because it's just the two of us tonight. Richard, unfortunately, unwell, so get well soon, mate, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bearing in mind that next week is this week Cutman's the international break, so if it's not bad enough for you to watch Scotland. Anyway,
you can do that on your own.
Yeah. McLaughlin P, he's obviously just saying, hurry up, guys, get on. We're a minute or two late getting on there. I was wolfing my dinner down. All right, all good. And we don't hear Smothered Love. He's just saying, missed another pod. Well, we're here.
I think this is because of the time difference has changed on the East Coast, hasn't it?
Yeah, we are unaffected by time changes, so our time and where we are stays the same. There's certain people in our state who think that the curtains fade and the cows don't know what time it is to get milked if there's daylight savings. So unfortunately, we are immune to changes in time. Well, not immune, because obviously it affects us everyone else changes their clocks, but we don't change ours, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And McLaughlin P up with the comments, he's saying, horrible little stadium up in Dingwall. It looks like my local junior park and oozes of a bad spectacle and a neutral peeking in. Yeah, okay. Well, it's not quite Celtic Park, that's for sure. And we certainly didn't play like we were at Celtic Park either, Paul. But before we get into the minutiae, the nitty-gritty, as it were, team lineups. So changes from, like I said, our trip to Germany. Adam Ida starting up front in place of Kyogo. We had Rio Hatate back in the starting lineup in place of Paulo Bernardo, who I thought probably worked his socks off against Dortmund, although tended to give the ball away. But I think that was a bit of a catch-22. Like, he was running around, putting a lot of effort in, but then getting the ball and giving it away. But he wasn't alone in that one. Alex Valle, starting a left back in place of Greg Taylor, who's currently carrying a bit of an injury. And then Kartovic is still missing. So the back centre-half pairing of Liam Stales and Austin Trusty, the rest of the team unchanged. Paul, on paper, strong team, looking to bounce back from 7-1 defeat in the Champions League. Like you say, we scalp teams in Scotland for fun. It's apparently what we do. Any real red flags going into this one? I mean, team, we didn't make too many changes. Like, one was enforced, just to sort of freshen it up a little bit. Seems reasonable enough.
Yeah, I think the kind of obvious changes, obviously, Vi came in for an injury. And yeah, like you said, Bernardo, worked hard, tired himself out, but wasn't great. So it made sense to refresh him. I'd have actually probably refreshed one of the other two as well. And 2020 hindsight's perfect and all that.
It's a wonderful thing.
It's a handy tool, but I'd have surely the signing of Luke Cowan is precisely for games like this. He's a high quality Scottish League, Premier League player. He's been picked up because this is his bread and butter, and presumably you can rotate the squad after a tough midweek in the Champions League. Now, it doesn't really get much tougher than being run ragged in Dortmund and getting horsed 7-1, flight there, and then the traipse up to the Highlands afterwards. To me, he should have started. Brilliant cameo when he come on, which we'll get to, but that for me was a more obvious change. And I don't see why we couldn't have that as well. I'll be honest, the midfield three, as good as their pedigree is, offered very little in the first half, and you could have hooked all three of them, to be honest, if you had the inclination. So yeah, I think Luke McCowan can feel a little bit hard done by to not get the start. I think based on his performance, you will probably see him start in more of these post-Champions League fixtures in the league, and I certainly think he can be fully trusted to do that. So yeah, that's the only other one. There was talk about Alistair Johnston still carrying that back injury, and so yeah, he must have been touch and go, and he certainly looked like he was off it first half, although he was key in the final shakedown. But yeah, obviously deemed fit enough to start. But yeah, on paper, a really strong side, probably up there with the strongest we could put out based on the previous game. But yeah, didn't really live up to billing, did it?
Nope, it did not. Strange Love the Doctor, quick review. Dortmund weren't that good against us. They didn't have to be. We were close individually and collectively. Well, Strange Love, I said at the end of last week's podcast that Celtic had to keep it tight early, be tidy in possession, and don't give away a stupid red card or penalty. And I'm pretty sure we did all three of those in the first 15 minutes. So didn't listen to me at all. If they listened to me, it might have been a different result. You never know. But I think Dortmund definitely had the shooting boots on. That was for sure. Like, they were lethal. But when you cough up possession on the edge of your box and in your final third, you are going to create all sorts of pain for yourself. Undisciplined pressing. Nicholas Kuhn particularly fault for that. And I just think that, the luxury of two wingers in Europe, particularly away from home against expert opposition who, made Champions League finals last year, might not be the wisest decision, but it'll be interesting to see what Brendan does against Atalanta. It'll be interesting to see how the team performs because, yep, Brendan picked the team, but the players on the part still have to take a lot of responsibility for their, what they managed to put out there because it wasn't really up to snuff. And I can understand being a bit flat after that performance. You've been scalped 7-1, coming back, then you've got to take the long trip up to Dingwall. I get all that, but the energy levels, weren't quite there early doors, and the warning sign for an average Celtic performance is that lazy passing the ball, lackadaisical side to side stuff. Centre halves taking out umpteen touches, Callum McGregor passing the ball back the way. All the early signs were there that we were going to struggle. And sure enough, it was a struggle, all right. I'll just run through a couple more comments. My old man saying, looking good, lads. I'm glad to see you've worked out the Wi-Fi in Bali already, Dad. That's impressive. You only got there not that long ago, so well done. And then what's Maish saying here? He's saying, Ross County, good tactics. 5 up front pressing and retreating with 5 at the back. Same tactics used by Crystal Palace. Rogers to learn a thing or two from this. Ooh, big call. All right, we'll come back to that. That's good. And there's a few things people looking ahead, but we won't get too far ahead of ourselves at the moment, Paul. But yeah, look, I mean, all the possession in the world. I think we're about 80% possession for the first half. I really couldn't think of any real clear-cut chances in that entire half. I mean, there was one where Maeda, actually, Ida should have played it to Maeda, but he got trapped on the ball and dilly-dallied on it inside the box. But apart from that, it was a half of, like I said, a lot of sideways passing. Wingers constantly trying to cut in, Nicholas Kuhn being prime candidate on that one, when we weren't really testing them on the outside. We weren't trying to cut the ball back and play that cross ball out of Mida, who's a big unit who can sort of get in front of the defender, and he's showing that he can score those sorts of goals, but we weren't giving him that sort of service. European hangover, Paul, or were we just a bit sort of expecting just to waltz up there and get the 3 points?
I think there was a bit of both, to be honest. Yeah, like I said, travel over there, up to the Highlands, etc., etc. Usual story. It's an old cliche. It's an easy out. But I definitely think that there's a general feel, certainly first half, maybe based on our domestic dominance so far this season. We have been good, right? We've been blowing teams away. I think there was maybe just a little bit of complacency crept into the squad. And maybe some of that noise that had been around about, it's hard to step up to the Champions League when you're, smashing fodder in Scotland. Maybe some of that noise leaks through to the players and they think they're gonna go up there and it's gonna be an easy day's work, which it clearly wasn't. And Rodgers alluded to it in some of his post-match comments that, some people looked like they were here for an easy game, or they thought it was going to be an easy game, at least first half. And he was pretty pointed, his comments like that. He sort of indicated it made, I think it sounded like he meant the new players, but he was then in the post-match press conference, he was asked a more detailed question on that, and he corrected himself and sort of said, well, no, I didn't explicitly mean the new players. I meant the whole team. It's a collective. But yeah, they looked pretty relaxed and a bit chilled out before they went into the huddle and just as they were kicking off. And you want them relaxed, but they didn't look like they were ready for a battle. And the pace they played at and the intensity they played at, especially in the first half, indicated they didn't go for the kill like they've been doing. It was. In terms of chances, I picked up 2 pretty decent chances, and to your point, they both came from wide areas. There was one earlier in the first half that Maeda gets close to the byline or near enough to the byline and drills it across, and I think Kuhn's coming at the back post and there's a sliding challenge and he just can't quite connect and they scramble it away. That was a pretty good chance. And then there was one really good delivery, I think, from Alistair Johnson, and Maeda comes and meets it at the back post with a really solid header, and he should probably do better. He's got a free header at the back post, and instead of it nestling in the top corner of the net, it sort of fires past back the way it came, the far post from Ayra's side. Those were really the two key chances. There was a couple of floated crosses into Ida early on, which he got his head on, but couldn't get on target. But given that they found him twice in the first maybe 5-10 minutes, I thought, well, if he's it, that surely that he's in the team, take advantage of that. We've like you said, we've seen him score some great goals. I think of the goal he scored against Motherwell when he came off the bench and we needed him to sort of save us up at Fir Park last season. There was a great delivery in the box and he buried a header and then a great cutback and he tucked one away. That's his bread and butter, and we just never really got that near him. To your point, we saw wingers cutting in and it was super congested in the middle of the pitch. The opportunity was in the wide areas, and the 2 or 3 times we got out there, we looked reasonably threatening, or certainly as threatening as we did at all in the first half. But County, County probably had the best chance in the first half before the goal. Ronan Hale got away, and it's a pretty tight angle, but he drills a great effort, and Schmeichel's forced into a good save, and really the only save a keeper has to make in the first half, until the penalty, which I guess we'll get to in a little bit, if not right now.
Norris of Locksley, good day to you, sir. Thank you for joining us live. I mean, first half they had Ross County had 5 shots on target to our 0. So although balls were whistling past and missed connections and whatever, we never managed to get a shot on target for the whole first half. It was a great strike by Hale, and then even the follow up wasn't too bad either. And that you're sort of thinking, they're capable of hitting us on the break. I mean, it wasn't always super fluent and super convincing, but you can see they were just starting to build a little bit of confidence as the half was going on, because obviously we hadn't scored. And then, again, we were starting to get a little bit ragged and a little bit sloppy in possession as well. So, and that's what leads to the penalty shout and obviously the penalty and then the goal after 2 attempts. William Stales, I mean, his arm's in a natural position. I mean, we got a carbon copy goal at penalty last week, the week before. No complaints. He unnatural position. He really needs to sort of do a bit better there, but can't do much about it. Referee's not picked it in real time, and it's been referred to VAR. And like I said, totally justified. I mean, there's no. I'm not ready to sit here and argue anything against that. And then the one thing that Rowan Hill did well, he took a terrible penalty. But the one thing he did do is he got Schmeichel off his line. And at least that forced the retake from their point of view. So, and he obviously did much better with his second attempt. So like I said, what were your thoughts on all that, Paul? Because there's a bit better going on. Casper Schmeichels, he was sort of hitting
up to mischief, wasn't he?
Up to mischief, being a bit naughty.
He was. And look, the funny thing is, I get where you're going with this, but I think Scales' arm is in a natural position, or a relatively natural position. As you move your body, if you turn your body, the arm kind of comes, doesn't it? So, but he's making his body bigger, and it's out and away from his body. So it's absolutely a penalty. Not going to deny that in the slightest. I just do think that when you do certain movements, your arms end up in other positions. It's a bit like the one from, I think it was last season or season before, where Burnaby jumps, and you jump, you obviously use your arms for leverage. Your arms are absolutely in a natural position. He got hit when he wasn't looking. It was behind. It got, back then it got given. So I get what you're saying by natural position, but it kind of comes up. But it's absolutely a penalty. Not sure why the linesman isn't helping out the ref in real time. I don't know why that ends up needing. It's another example of what we were talking about, or what we've talked about in recent weeks, where last season refs just disregarded any responsibility because they knew VAR was going to bail them out. And this season, we seem to have been in a position where the on-field decision, more often than not, is what sort of holds water in the end. And only VAR gets involved when it's a howler. And this is a howler. Like they've got to get that right on the pitch. Schmeichel's definitely a little bit naughty. And when he saves it, before you realise he's gone off his line, you sort of think between him and the Celtic team in general, they've done a brilliant job. It's absolute gamesmanship, but everybody's entitled to do it. He's roughing up the penalty spot. He's delaying it by telling the ref it's not on the spot. He's slowing him down. He's putting pressure on the kicker.
The
McGregor's in there.
Crowd's going wild as well.
McGregor is in there. Trusty was in there. There was a bit of a scuffle between a couple other guys. They did everything they could to put him off, slow him down. All those kind of slightly naughty tactics, if we're being honest, but it happens. And he hits a pretty poor penalty. The only thing that's in his advantage is, as you say, he's drawn him off his line. And I think the reason he's done that is he's done that stuttery run up, which I can't stand, to be honest. And even Engels has got a slight stop in his run up, even though he's tucked it a couple of ways. I'm not a big fan of it. But I reckon it's that stutter that sort of draws the keeper off his line, because he's itching to get there. And he's off his line. So, again, maybe they should pick that on. I think linesmen stand on the line, so they should probably see that as well. But okay, VAR gets involved again, and you can't really argue with that decision either.
It's a mile off his line.
I think he's a yard off on the still they show, but the foot's already through and the ball's part away. So he's definitely off his line. So no complaints. I guess the only complaint I've got about penalties being retaken or otherwise is there was a penalty the other week in Glasgow that there was encroachment by two players and potentially goalkeeper off his line on that one as well. And no, that save stood, yet the save didn't. So we'll maybe leave it at that. I don't think every game is refereed exactly equally, but there you go. Looking forward to Paul telling it's definitely not a pen. Well,
I hope you're having a warm lemsip there, Richard, and resting that voice of yours, mate. We'll get you back on soon, okay?
Yeah, definitely a pen. No chance. I'm going to be contrary on this one. But yeah.
So we go 1-0 down. Yep.
I think the last thing to say on that, it's a brilliant follow-up pen. After all that pressure missing, it's really easy to then miss it again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's how often do you see that? Players
you go to the same side, you go to the other side, like you set yourself out. Yeah.
He absolutely drills it, and it's a really good finish. He's a Celtic man as well, by the way. Ronan
Yeah. That was a photo.
Celebrated like he wasn't
today. Yeah, well, I don't mind that. Again, you're playing. Get in there, celebrate what you like. It's fine. So that was the 43rd minute. So we had a little, we sort of flurry for a few minutes up to half time, thinking, all right, let's see if we can get a quick equaliser here, but it wasn't to be. Bundling at half time, you're thinking Rodgers rocket incoming, because that wasn't good enough. You could see it wasn't good enough. The group chat was ablaze with who should come off and who should be getting dragged and who should be coming on, and all and so forth. So, but Rodgers isn't going to make changes at halftime because that's a reflection on his team selection if he's making changes that early in the game. So he'll give the team to the 60th minute mark to see if they can pull themselves out of a hole. And I think, to be honest, Paul, Celtic nearly shot themselves in the foot. Alistair Johnston with a very uncharacteristic loose pass. Ronan Hill latches onto it, sees Schmeichel off his line. And on another day, I mean, that could have been 2-0. I mean, he wasn't far away. I mean, he knew exactly what he was trying to do. He just a little bit wide. But I tell you what, that had summed it right up because, probably one of your most consistent players this season, just giving the ball away in a really bad position. You're sort of thinking, all right, well, if Rodgers was going to give them any more time, I think the substitutes are imminent. Right? And as soon as that happened, they cut straight to the bench, and you saw the guys getting up, warming up, and that. So I figured the changes weren't coming soon after that, were coming soon after that. But any sort of dispute over who he took off? Obviously, made a triple change on the 60-minute mark. I had them all pegged as possible substitutes. Thoughts?
Yeah, look, none of them covered. Like I said earlier, there was plenty of candidates for the hook, and the ones that got it probably pretty fair. And in terms of how it panned out from there, you can't really argue with any of them. You definitely swap the midfield, and the skipper usually gets allowed to carry on. So, but as poor as McGregor was first half, he was marginally better than the other two. Hatate tried things, but they just didn't come off. And Engels looked a mile off it. Like he covered the most ground of any player in Dortmund. Like of any player on either side, he covered the most ground, nearly 13 Ks, I think he did on the night. Most of it futile, to be honest. And at times, you still thought he could have been working harder and moving faster. And that's how how sort of stripped we were and how all over the place we were. But yeah, he looked completely off it. And I've heard the usual over analysis or overread into he doesn't want to be here. He's realised he doesn't want to be in Scotland and playing at these rubbish grounds and crap teams, and it's clearly nonsense, right? Lots of players. He started like a steam train, and that automatically is the feeling like, well, that's the level, he can't drop below it. But he's a new player in a new country. He's young. He's a young player as well. His form is going to go up and down. Yeah, I don't know how many places that like Dingwall he will have played in, at least not since he's turned professional. So it will. It's a different experience. So yeah, he didn't play well, but I don't believe it's anything more than an off day. I expect him to pick up form, but he was quite entitled to get the hook. And we've talked about the depth we've got in midfield. It's probably the strongest part of the squad. And so, players will have to kick on. And if they're not at the races, then, you might have to sit on the bench. And I think Rodgers is the kind of manager that just because he's paid 11 million quid for a player, if he isn't on form, then he might have to sit on the bench for a bit. I'm not saying that Engels immediately gets replaced. He probably doesn't. The break's coming at a good time. Top of the table clash coming in a couple of weeks. You certainly hope. I haven't checked who's all been selected. I'm guessing Engels is in the Belgian squad. But either way, I don't think he won't have full game time over this period. So hopefully come back refreshed and ready for a top of the title battle in a couple of weeks. But yeah, the substitutions absolutely valid. I think the only one of those first three, absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. The James Forrest one was an interesting one. I wasn't sure if Maeda needed the hook, but because he had looked dangerous, there was a chance where he ran in and there was a sliding challenge. Now we might have lost Anthony briefly, so I'm going to ramble along on my own here and until he returns. But there was a comment earlier. Let me just see if I can find it. Might have been Strangelove the Doctor. Yeah, here it is. I can't put this up, but I will read it out. Strangelove the Doctor, I thought we should have had a penalty for the off-the-floor lunge from behind on Maeda. The fella was out of control. He did get the ball, but it looked dangerous to me. So look, I would say in terms of we've got all sorts of technical issues. Anthony will be back. I will just continue. So in terms of this one, we saw a few replays. I looked at it multiple times. I was of the view that it might be a penalty, maybe first, even second time. But there was a good angle eventually, which showed him he did clearly get the ball. And I didn't think he was particularly out of control. Yes, he was sliding in. I don't think his studs were up. But generally, I thought there was probably just enough of control and the getting of the ball together that I wasn't too unhappy with the decision not to give us a penalty on that one. So yeah, we'll move on. I'm just going to crack on. Anthony is on his way back, but I'm just going to move on. So the subs came on, and we immediately saw a change in intensity. Those three really made a difference. So we had Luke McCowan coming on for Rio Hatate. We had Paulo Bernardo coming on for Arne Engels. And we had Kyogo coming on for Adam Ida. I've touched on the other two midfielders. I thought Ida, really was kind of off it as well. As I say, had a couple of early opportunities, got his head on things, but they just went wide. And after that, he was kind of starved of service. So it was not a surprise to see him get the hook. So yeah, we sort of got a bit of intensity immediately. We got Anthony back, thankfully. Can you hear us a bit?
I can hear you, yep.
Good. So I've just padded a little bit. We've covered Strains Love the Doctors, penalty shout, and yeah, we just covered the subs and the return to intensity following their arrival. As I was saying to you just before I went off, I didn't necessarily think that Maeda needed to be pulled. I thought he looked a bit dangerous. He got in behind a couple of times in the second half, but obviously, if you're going to take off a winger, I think probably was him. Because Kuhn was looking the sharper of the two, and obviously that played out and was vindicated as well. And Maeda obviously probably got through more work on Tuesday night as well, so that made a bit of sense from that point of view. Yeah, we'll hand back to you to take us through the next stages of the game, and hopefully you will be with us for the remainder of the show, because that was...
It will be, because my laptop just lost power, because I thought it was plugged into charge, but the socket...
I had a mild panic when I was on my own for a bit.
It was. I text you as I was coming back. The battery in my laptop died, so apologies about that. And then my headphones were also playing up, so it was a quick chance to do a double change. So, so doing a Celtic. Yeah, Paul. I checked the substitutions made an instant impact. I mean, the intensity levels, the incisiveness into Ross County's box. We seem to release AJ and Valle a lot more. They seem to get a lot more sort of involved in the play, and we all of a sudden started to find width that we hadn't had for pretty much the entire match up until that point. So you kind of felt, well, a goal could be coming, but then you're thinking it's probably just going to be a scrappy something just to get us back in the game. And I mean, just before that, obviously Callum McGregor had a bit of a long range effort. It was quite unlucky, got onto his left foot, got a wee bit of space. I think there was a comment here from Maesh saying that Ross County did start to tire a little bit. It's possible. But, I guess when you're 1-0 up with half an hour to go at home, that still gives you a bit of energy that you wouldn't necessarily have if you were a couple of goals down. But yeah, so Carmack finds a bit of space and his shot just sort of bursts wide. But I think there was a comment here as well from Richard there involved. Kyogo energy and Luke McCowan sparkle too. But the point about Kyogo is that he was moving the defense and stretching them and doing his usual where he's running offside, and then the centre half doesn't know whether to go with him or whether to leave him. And it creates uncertainty and creates space. And that was something that Adam Ida was probably guilty of, was being a little bit too static. We weren't playing to his strengths. We weren't really playing the ball into him at all. But in saying that, if it's not working for him, he needs to agitate and at least move defenders around and create a bit of space, maybe for Maeda or for Kuhn or for Engels. And I thought that was probably Kyogo. He was sort of in amongst it, and he actually got the flick on touch that led to the goal. So we may as well talk about that now. We're 33 minutes in. So Palabanado's deliveries, I thought, from his free kicks and corners was on the most part really good. So I think it was one corner he duffed it, and one free kick he duffed, but the rest of them were all really good deliveries, angled with energy and a bit of power and a bit of dip. So this one, Kyogo's managed to lose his marker, and I think one of the parts of the Ross County side is that their centre half or right back, big black laddie, he cramped up and he had to go off. Trying to think of his name now. It was Ifeti. He went off in the 76th minute. So he went off with cramp, and then the guy that came on lost Kyogo for the flick on. Keeper's actually pulled a really good save, and I didn't actually realise initially how good a save that was, but actually it was only in the post-match when they were going back through the goals. Laidlaw actually pulls a really good save, because another day that creeps in past him and Kyogo scores. So he managed to fist it out, and obviously it comes out to ends up breaking to Cal Mack. He has another shot, this one with his right foot, I'm assuming, so it goes sort of slightly wide of our right post, keeper's left, and then AJ just happens to be in the right spot to stick a hip on it and direct into the back of the net. And as I said I think it was to Richard and Johnny last night, I said that one definitely will not be making the highlight reel at the end of the season, but as far as important goals are concerned, it turns the match. And yeah, the goal itself is what it is, but it was just that lift in intensity and the movement and, the classic elements of the Celtic team that have gotten us to 7 wins in a row in the league. 6 or 7, 6, 7. Well, how many of us? Unbeaten. It just we managed to sort of brush away that first 60 minutes of performance, and it was a bit of a flurry, but we score in the 72nd minute. Sorry, 76 minutes. Sorry, apologies. I thought it was earlier than that. 76, and I felt as soon as we scored that, I went, we're going to get a winner, and probably shouldn't really be feeling that way given how we'd played pretty much up until that point. But I just felt that once that goal goes in, you just see all the Ross County lads, their heads go down, and they're like, and they really shouldn't, because the only team that's beaten them at home this season is Aberdeen. They've either drawn or beaten every other team that they've played at Dingwall up until that point. So, anyone thinking it was going to be an easy day at the office, Don Cowie's done a really good job, sort of at least steadying Ross County's home form, so that they're sitting 6th or 7th in the league, and you can see why. There's enough structure and discipline there, and the likes of Hale up front, they've gone wide, they've got a bit of threat as well. Paul, goal, classic. Will it make your highlight reel? Will it be one of your most important moments of the season at the end of the season?
Yeah, no. Well, it's an important goal. It's absolutely one of the important goals. Certainly one of the most important goals in this run. Most games we've won comfortably by multiple goals, and this one's by the odd goal, and this is what got us off and running. I'm like you. I sort of missed how good a header and how good a save the Kyogo chance was. When you actually watch it back, he makes an absolutely brilliant run. Obviously, we know his movement's great, but he's pretty much on the penalty spot as Bernardo's shaping to take that corner. He tears off his original marker and gets in front of at least another one, and gets a brilliant flick on it. And you're right, the keeper actually digs out a brilliant save. He's pretty much on the line, and it's down near his feet, and it could just as easily have gone in. But yeah, McGregor's the first to react, and it's not a great strike, but at least he's getting it back in the direction it needs to be. And in a busy goal mouth, they can go anywhere. And AJ is alert enough. I thought it just hit him initially, but yeah, very clearly in the replay, he sort of sees it coming and just nudges the hip thigh in that direction and steers it in, and looks a bit sheepish in his celebration because he hasn't really had to do much. But it's a massive goal, because as much as the tide was turning, you still need that breakthrough to absolutely, you need the breakthrough to sort of build momentum. And I agree with you. As soon as one was in, you thought, well, we'll get another. And actually, you kind of thought there was a third in it for us, to be honest, with what, 7 minutes of injury time. I was a little bit surprised we didn't turn the screw and stick another one in. But yeah, it's a scruffy a goal, as you'll see, but hugely important one.
Actually, a really good post-match interview with AJ and Nicholas Kuhn. It's on Sky Sports, but you should be able to find it on YouTube. But it was AJ was very he's like, oh, they were trying to tell me that I directed it in and it was missing, but I didn't believe them, because but every goal's a goal, and he was very sort of modest about it. Nicholas Kuhn, on the other hand, quite an interesting character. He was like, because obviously we'll get to it in a minute, but Chris Boyd was calling for his sending off after his celebration. And Nicholas Kuhn was like, I got booked. What did I get booked for? Like, he was, and that was probably the one thing we haven't really touched on was their sort of clash, because that was before we scored, and you're thinking, I hope we're not going to lose discipline, but there really wasn't. It was handbags, and there really wasn't anything in that. But the referee does the default, oh, well, if I don't know, I'll just book both of you, and we'll move on, sort of thing. But Nicholas Kuhn, probably again not his greatest day at the office, but he left his best for last, because we're obviously getting on by this point, and we're thinking maybe we weren't getting the winner, but we sort of felt like we should have been getting a winner, but we didn't. But 88th minute, Paul, It all starts in our left-hand corner. You Trusty in there.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And I think Vi was in there as well. And then Bernardo just comes in and goes, yoink, and somehow managed to hook the ball. I don't know how he does it without fouling, but he doesn't, gets the ball away.
He just uses his body really well. He gets his body across, sticks his backside out. A bit John McGinn-esque or Kenny Dalglish for those that are even older than us.
It's what I like. It's probably what I like about Bernardo the most. He's everyone. He can ride a tackle, and he seems to be able to stick a foot in and win the ball cleanly. And yeah, that was a perfect example of that. And it was probably that dig and endeavour that we're missing in that first half. From being honest, like he seems to be not the scapegoat, but he seems to be the one who drops out as soon as, like, if Rodgers wants to freshen things up. But maybe he needs to look a bit further afield. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, he gets the ball and then plays a ball up. Not the best ball, headed back in. And Luke McCowan, this is where he was brilliant. Kills it with his first touch, draws the foul with his second, and then clearly no advantage. So it's a free kick. Obviously, a bit of controversy. Don Cowie saying, there was not enough contact for a free kick, but clearly the referee was trying to play advantage. Lost the ball, no advantage. Quick free kick out to AJ, and AJ probably plays one of the best passes I've seen from Celtic all season. I mean, the weight on it was just perfect, right in the path of Kuhn. Doesn't have to break his stride. And then you're just thinking, what's he going to do here? Is he going to take it wide and get a cutback? Not this time. He decides to cut inside. And unfortunately for Ross County, the defender doesn't read it. And the next minute, it's in the back of the net. And he made that look so easy, but that is not an easy finish by any stretch. Like, there's so many moving parts to that. Picking the ball up, sending the defender the wrong way, turning inside, and then being able to sort of stroke it with pace in the bottom corner. I mean, that will make the highlight reel at the end of the season, will it not? Because I mean, that was just, I'd play it from when it's in the corner flag. So we basically got it from our corner flag up to the back of the net in the space of 30 seconds. It was impressive.
Yeah, and most of the replays actually on the highlights packages that I've seen since don't started there. They started at the free kick, if that. But you're right. It's a great finish. He's basically just passed it into the bottom corner. He's shown the composure that McGregor didn't when he was in a very similar position. Obviously, the difference earlier in that McGregor was kind of a bit more straight on, and he tried to do the same. He just tried to pass it into the corner, and he just put it the wrong side of the post. But it's a great finish, especially at that time. The other thing that's really quite impressive is, given how we play, and we're expected to play flat balls across to central players to finish between the sticks, he resists the temptation to play in Kyogo. And in his post-match interview on Celtic TV, I don't know if he mentioned this on Sky, but it sounds like there was a bit more frivolity in that interview. He was interviewed on his own, and he was asked about, was he single-minded in terms of going for goal himself? And he said, well, I looked up and I was considering passing it to Kyogo, but I judged that he was in an offside position, and he would have been in an offside position. So again, at full pace, running, getting his head up, making decisions. One of the criticisms we had of Kuhn very early in the season, I mean, first couple of games, and for periods last season, was his decision-making in terms of, quite often he'd cut in, but then not shoot and kind of run down blind alleys and not do anything. He's really ramped up his decision-making more regularly in terms of when to shoot, when to pass, when to release, when to hold on. And this is another example. Like, at full pace, he's checking inside, he's weighing up whether he's passing or holding, and then he's tucking it away. And it's a great finish, but really good contribution and a good pickup by both Bernardo and McCowan, who came off the bench and were absolutely key to turning the tide in our favour.
McCowan was just very comfortable in the ball and used the ball well and broke up play and won the ball back. It just gave us that bit of dig that we definitely lacked in the first half. And yeah, I definitely think he'll come into Rodgers' plans for games, like you say, post-Europe, away from home, which seems to be how our fixture list is rolling. So yeah, I definitely see a spot available for him. And, you know, all right, Arnie Engels, I don't think he had a great game against Dortmund. Like you say, covered a lot of ground, but not a lot to show for it. And then that was probably his worst half of football on Sunday, for being brutally honest. He's 21. He's going to have ebbs and flows to his game. Matt O'Reilly had plenty of ups and downs at the start of his Celtic career. Like I think we're thinking, and I'm probably guilty of thinking we've got the finished article right from the get-go, but at 21, is anyone really the finished article? Unless they're $100 million player, probably not. So, we're just going to have to accept that there's going to be times where he's not quite got it right and he's just maybe not in it as much as he needs to be. But the flip side to that is we've now got the depth to say, all right, pull him out, put McCowan in, put Bernardo in. Hatate didn't have a great half either. He's been blown a bit hot and cold at times. So, competition for places is good. And I think it's just up to Rodgers to try and find that balance and still try and get the right combination, the right mix that will work for the right games. But there's plenty to come. And, and it's just, I guess this is the first glimpse we've got at a Celtic side playing 2 games a week, because we've really been quite fortunate up until now where we've pretty much been 1 game a week and we've had all week to prepare for whoever we've been playing against in the Scottish Premiership, and we've basically swashed them aside week after week after week. Now we're coming back off a plane on a Thursday night or Wednesday night or Thursday morning or whatever it is, just been scalped in Europe, pick ourselves back up, maybe get a day's training if we're lucky, and then we're going to play another game. Whereas the team we're playing against has had a week to analyze us and come up with a game plan to nullify us. So, it's important to have those ability to change it up. And thankfully the substitutes did that, and we've got that depth. But, when we're kicking and screaming in the transfer window and we need more signings, this is the reason why. It's not when you're playing 1 game a week, it's when you're playing 2 games a week, and you need to freshen things up. And thankfully, like I said, we got away with it. And the weird thing was we scored in the 88th minute, and it felt like there was an eternity before the actual final whistle, because there was like 6 or 7 minutes additional time, which is fair enough because there was a few stoppages. I'm not disputing that, but it's always the way. Like you think you're sort of last gas winner, and then still another
10 minutes near enough.
Yeah. After that,
it was 88 minutes, and then 7. So yeah, there's another 9, nearly 9, nearly 10 minutes.
So you're just wishing the game away at that point. But I don't think there was any real great sort of scares. I think there was one wee shout where Ross Trinity maybe should have got a free kick near the end, and Don Robertson let it go. But apart from that, I thought we sort of navigated it fairly well. And like you say, Paul, on another day, we probably could have scored and made it 3-1. And then again, it's like, what problem? Like, we won 3-1, but anyway, like I said,
I think there was an element of potentially thinking we would just try and close and see the game out. We got a corner right on about 90 minutes, and there was, we just see it out, and then the board went up for 7 and went, well, you're not going to just play to see it out for 7 minutes. You might as well try and get another one. And there was nothing super close, but we played some nice stuff in that last period. The surprise for me in that injury time time added on was there was a few opportunities in our half for County where they could have taken a long throw in, really throwing it up. Jordan White was on, obviously, like throwing it into the box, tried to cause mayhem, which is one of their main tactics. And they took short throw-ins just around the middle of the pitch. And I just thought it was a bit strange, but I guess that shows the change with Don Cowie as the manager, as compared to previous incumbents. They are trying to play a bit more football, but I just thought that late in the game they would try and throw it in and cause mayhem, but it didn't quite happen. Yeah, as you say, we sort of saw it out pretty comfortably. But yeah, you're right. 2 games a week. There's going to be plenty more of this. Injuries are starting to become a thing now. So CCV Well, yeah, I guess hard life, but that's where you need the squad. You're gonna pick up injuries. You're gonna get stretched.
We really get attrition. You're going to get players who are fatigued.
Well, we're already playing with players that aren't fully fit. Like AJ's carrying a back injury. Greg Taylor's been carrying an injury. That's now knocked him out. CCV was playing with an injury. This is all in the first few games of the season, so it's only going to get worse. But yeah, this is where the squad will have to pick up, and players that you think are quite far out of the picture are going to need to be used in some of these games, if not from the start, then certainly 30-40 minutes of games. I'm thinking of the likes of Yang and Palmer and these guys potentially. But yeah, this is an absolute valid comment. I hate international breaks as well, but this is a good time. We'll get some players some rest. AJ's not going to go and join up with Canada, so he's got rest time. CCV's got a bit more time. It sounds like he could be back in the team for the Aberdeen game, which would be great. But yeah, we've guys like Vi and Trusty have had more minutes, which whatever you think of their performances early in the season, it's definitely going to be beneficial as the season pans out.
I think Trusty's got a little bit of Carl Starfelt syndrome in the sense that he's playing on the wrong side. So there's just, I think it looks to be a bit wrong-footed at times. I think there's an athlete there. I think there's a player there, but it's just one of these ones where you've got two left-sided centre halves playing side by side. It's not ideal, but we're getting away with it. Well, we got away with it in Ross County, but obviously didn't get away with it against Dortmund. But I'll just qualify that point. I don't actually think the centre halves in Dortmund actually had a bad game. Like they weren't at fault for 7 goals. You know what I mean? Like they're
massively exposed by the midfield predominantly. And
there was players
giving away cheap balls.
Well, there was the one where Stales got done. So he got done for the 3rd or 4th or 5th goal. By that point, it mattered anyway. But there was one that he got done. But apart from that, I'd have to say that it was the midfield leaving them wide open. And then Greg Taylor being a wee bit AWOL at left back. And I said, I think Maesh made the comment, and I started it earlier, but our pressing was just all over the place, and that really just allowed us to be unpicked really easily. Like they played out of our press very easily, where we couldn't play out of their press, and that for me is the coaching, but then also the players on the park. If you're trying to pass the ball out and you're losing it every single time, maybe just for 5 minutes, would you not just try pinging it up to Kyogo or just hitting it out to Maeda as an out ball? Because when Maeda got the ball out wide, he was the one that actually created those couple of chances that, on another day, maybe Store, maybe not. But
was it Jan Kyoto? He had him on toast in the wide areas. He was clearly quicker than him. Like the press was weird. Like we were committing like 5-6 players like deep into their like fullback positions and just getting chipped over, and then there was a massive gap. And there was just too much space in midfield between each of those 3 guys. There were way too much space between the lines. McGregor is, as good as he is, he's not a defensive midfielder in the classic sense. He's like a quarterback, like holding midfielder. He dictates the game from a deeper position. He doesn't really sit and anchor the midfield in a defensive format, which is another reason why I feel like we should have had 2 in there. Neither of them would have been out and out defensive midfielders, but if they play in front and give protection, then they can be disciplined. And we've got multiple play. Engels could play there deeper. Bernardo can play there deeper. Tati Apush can play there deeper. So we've got the personnel that can do it. But I think if we are going to progress at that absolute top level, we need to probably sign a proper out and out defensive holding midfielder, because we don't have one in the squad. McGregor's a converted holding midfielder who was previously an 8 or a 10. And in those big games, you see it. And he was, even in the first 2-3 minutes, there was multiple times he was caught further up the pitch, and it was 4-on-4 on the bank line because Julian Brandt was in the hole, and the front 3 were up against their markers, and so you're basically 4-on-4 twice inside the first 3.5 minutes is just bonkers. Like, you just, the standard thing is you go away from home, keep it tight for the first 15, 20 minutes, half an hour.
You would think.
Madness. But yeah, I'm sort of past talking about
no.
We've not done a lot of it on air, but yeah, hopefully there's a more considered and pragmatic approach in Atalanta. Based on what the boss is saying in public, at least, I'm not convinced we'll see that. And if we play as open as we did against Dortmund, we'll get another thumping. But fingers crossed, we're a little bit more pragmatic.
In other news, Big Ange, 2-0 up, lost 3-2. Pressure starting him out on him. He's pressed his post-match interview. His head was down. Oh, Ange, feeling for you, buddy. Hope we can turn it around.
Well, yeah. No, I think. I think I didn't see the interview, but I read the comments, and he said it was the worst performance since he came.
He's been there,
which is pretty damning. And a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, the pressure's really coming on." I've seen a couple other group chats that have got mixed fans, mostly English Premier League fans. I was like, well, yes and no. Like he's just off the back of 5 wins in a row, in all competitions. So I think there's a quick to jump on there. The players have got to take some responsibility. That game should have been wrapped up and done and dusted. They were pretty poor. I just watched the highlights, but they looked pretty poor where they sort of shot themselves in the foot and gave just a momentum shift that the on-field players couldn't turn it back around. And obviously he couldn't produce anything from the bench either. I think if they get rid of him, I can't see them going. I think they'll get a better outcome if they persist with him than if they chop and change and bring in another.
I can't see it happening. I could see Ange walking away before I can see him getting sacked, because he's on a 3-year deal and they're tight with money. So I just can't see them sacking him because they don't want to pay him out. Anyway, another thing I was ready to say was Enes Hadji made his comeback for Rangers yesterday off the bench and decides to basically try and break someone's leg. Red cards, wholly worthy of that red card as well. You can watch the highlights on that one, but naughty. But yeah, he'll be out for a couple of weeks with that one, I'd imagine. Paul, we haven't done man of the match, so we may as well do man of the match, and then we'll do some recommendations and reviews. So who are you going with? Because I haven't really thought about this, to be honest.
I've thought about this, and I've got a sort of a few pat on the backs,
a short list,
and then my man of the match. So Alistair Johnson had a pretty terrible 60 minutes, and I mean pretty terrible. You highlighted the one that he gave away. He was poor, really quite poor. But he has match-winning contributions, so he gets a pat on the back for me. He doesn't get man of the match because it's the match, not just the key contributions.
Okay, sure.
But he gets a goal. He gets a goal and an assist. So fair play. He's contributed at key moments. Kuhn, comes in and does some good work again. But as I say, he's been picking up gongs all over the place, so he's not done enough for me. And the subs, obviously, Kyogo had that one major impact, and Bernardo and McCowan really lifted the tempo and intensity, and we're key to the turnaround. I'm going to give it to a player who played the full 90 minutes, and is not even gradually. He's taken a bit of heat early on, but he is growing in confidence and performance, pretty much what you would expect of a graduate from the academy at Barcelona. My man of the match is Alex Valle.
I was with Alex Valle as well, actually. It was his best performance. 90 minutes. Not in Dingwall, not an easy place to go. I thought he acquitted himself quite well, and he was he definitely first half. I mean, it was very low bar, but he definitely was one of a couple who stood up and put in a performance, and it didn't drop. So he put a full 90 minutes in. So no, I agree with that. I think that's definitely he's definitely worthy of man of the match, and he looks like he potentially might get a wee run of games if Greg Taylor is out injured. So, and he seems to play more of an actual left back, which might actually stand as injured stead in the Champions League and against Aberdeen. because they are our closest title rivals at the moment.
Well, they are.
Not that the media is talking about it or anything.
No. Well, I don't. If you're in Scotland, you're not even going to get to see the game by legal means. Yeah, no, I think interesting comments again. Brendan Rodgers post-match said he gave him some praise, didn't go over the top on him, but said he got himself into better positions in the second half and just played that slightly higher up. And I think the thing I like is he sort of seems to switch between he's obviously been coached a bit in the inverting to add into the benefits of flood that midfield, but he does. You're right. He gets on the overlap. Probably, definitely, I would say more than Greg Taylor tends to. And if he seems like he's more comfortable getting to the byline and then getting in behind, there was multiple opportunities second half where he linked really well down that channel and got himself around the back and was fizzing balls across. And on another day, he could have probably had an assist or two. So, yeah, I thought he was best of the bunch in the first half, which, as you said, was a low bar. And then, yeah, added to the overall team performance second half. So, yeah, he goes from strength to strength. I'm looking forward to what else he can produce in the coming weeks.
Recommendation time, Paul. What have you got for us this week, mate?
Yeah, so album recommendation, as it usually is. One of my this is a bucket list band that I haven't seen live, and I'm really keen to see them live, and I'm not sure if they've ever been down here. So fingers crossed on release of the 5th album, they might at some point make it down to Australia. The band is Public Service Broadcasting. The album is The Final Flight. If you don't know who Public Service Broadcasting is, go and check them out. They got this kind of, I guess, shtick, which is they pull historic footage. Well, not footage. Historic recordings, typically from the 20th century, and then they layer them and sample them through kind of art rock music, bit of electronica in there. Really quite cool, almost cinematic and soundtracky. And each of their albums has got some themes. The first one was sort of a mix of historical stuff. They touched on Everest and the fight against the Nazis. The second album was the sort of based around the race for space. Third album was about the demise of sort of mining in the Welsh valleys. Then one about Berlin, and this one is based on Amelia Earhart's last ever flight, where she attempted to be the first female pilot to circumnavigate the globe, and then went down near the end in the Pacific, and plane and body never found. So whereas in their earlier albums they've used actual recordings, in this case there wasn't a lot of original recordings. So what they've done is they've taken her archive journals and other bits and pieces of historic items, and they've got actors, voice actors to read the journal entries and other bits and pieces, and then they've manipulated the sound to sort of take it back to the 30s, and then used it in samples. And they've also used a couple of vocalists and added in actual live vocals, which hasn't always been part of their sound. So they've changed it up again, but basically it sort of tells the story of the build up to the journey and the excitement, and obviously right through to the end. So it really is quite cinematic. But yeah, Public Service Broadcasting, brilliant band if you haven't heard of them. 5 albums now, but yeah, my recommendation of the week is their new album, The Final Flight, which has just come out in the last couple of days.
Might need to check that out, Paul. That sounds very interesting. I've been watching Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story on Netflix. So I'm about 2 episodes left in that. Yeah, so I watched the first episode and you think, how is this 8 or 9 episodes? But they find a way. So got Chloe Sevigny and Javier Bardem playing the parents. Very good, very, very interesting story. Completely messed up. You get to see it from all angles, and yeah, like I said, worth that.
That's the drama. There's a doco out at the same time on Netflix as well.
Yeah, there is. And then I think Law and Order did one a couple of years ago on the same story. So there's various. It's been done a few times, but this has got the Ryan Murphy touch to it. So if you're sort of not squeamish about male nudity and everything else, then there's always a bit of that involved. But anyway,
While we're talking about Netflix, I've found myself bit of childhood nostalgia down the rabbit hole on Mr. McMahon, the Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah,
WWE
doco. I have thingied that
Still
one for a watch later. So yep.
Yeah. Good. So like, yeah, I think if you watched WWE at any point in your childhood, then and even kept one eye on it in later life, you'll it's a pretty interesting story. Only 2 or 3 episodes in, but yeah, worth a look based on those alone.
That's us for this week. Thank you everyone for joining us live. Again, please like and subscribe to the channel. Helps other like-minded celts find this this podcast, this episode. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. So obviously Scotland's playing Portugal and Croatia. Have I got that right? Portugal and someone.
I think Croatia. Yeah. I'll be honest. I've lost a bit of interest. I'll be honest.
Let's face it, we're probably not going to get any points out of those 2 games. But anyway, you never know. We'll see. But we'll be back in 2 weeks' time to review Celtic versus Aberdeen, or is Aberdeen versus Celtic?
No, it's at home.
That's our home game. There you go.
That's why it's not on the telly. It's Saturday at 3 p.m.
That's right. Yeah, sorry. You did say that, and I did see that. So, yeah. So we're back in 2 weeks' time to review that one. Hopefully Richard will be back. So it will be 3 of us. So all that's left to say in the meantime is hail, hail.
Hail, hail.